Thank you.
All right. So then let's start by preparing our mind, our body and mind for this session. And especially because we are still in this module on meditation, maybe we can do this a little bit longer. Yes, that we really take our time to really be with our body, to calm our body, prepare our body, bring it in the best situation, work with our mind to concentrate it, to calm it, and then actually meditate a little bit in order to generate a good motivation. Yeah, so that's something we can do for a longer time, and it's something that you can then also do at home, of course. If you want to do some Dharma at home, then you can prepare yourself in this way. So first we do as usual, we check our body, because there's a strong connection between the body and the mind. So in order to make a meditation effective, we want to have the body prepared. And that means in general that we want to have it very relaxed. We don't want to have any tensions anywhere. And we want to take a position so that the energies in the body are flowing freely. So that means especially we want to sit upright. So that being said, then we just go through the different points. We check the way we are sitting with our legs. If we can, we try to sit cross-legged. And we just go through the points. So if you sit cross-legged, you can try to sit a little bit higher with your bottom by using a cushion there. If it's possible, you can try to touch the floor with the knees. This will give you a very stable position. Apart from that, you can also sit on a chair or whatever is kind of useful for you. But also, if you want to sit on a chair, in any case, work with your spine. It is crucial that the body and the back of the body is straight, that the spine is straight. And we can imagine that the spine is like an arrow, or we can imagine that the spine is like a stack of coins, completely straight. Yeah, if the stack of coins would a little bit out of the middle, it would collapse. So we don't want that. We want to sit very straight. And then next we can check our shoulders, if there's any tension in the shoulders. But this is very often the case that there's tension in the shoulders. So we check that if we find any tension, we can roll the shoulders, or we can lift them and let them fall heavily in order to make the shoulders easy or relaxed. And then we can check the position for our hands. So normally we would put our hands in the lap so that the right hand is posited in the left hand. It is also said we try to keep the arms a little bit away from the body. But all of this has to be completely natural without any tension or any artificial forced position. And then we check our head. So the head is not supposed to be very high or very low, otherwise it's getting rather excited or sleepy. So again, we tuck the head a little bit in, such that it fits between our throat and our chin, while at the same time staying straight with our back and relaxed with our shoulders. And then we can check the muscles of the face, that all of that is relaxed, smooth. Check our eyes. The best is that we have the eyes half open and look along the nose to the floor without focusing on anything, but just to have the eyes open so that some light can come in and keep the mind awake. So that's the actual description how to do it. Apart from this, of course, you're free to choose your own way of doing this, whatever you find conducive, but the actual way in the description is that you should have the eyes half open. And then we check the jaw, that there's no tension at the jaw muscles. Make sure that we don't clench our teeth, that we don't forcefully kind of squeeze them together, but just naturally the teeth are resting on each other. Also the lips, we check that the lips are not tense, pressed together, but just natural. And then we put the tip of the tongue behind the upper row of the teeth to the palate in order to stop ourselves to have to produce a lot of saliva and swallow all the time. So we put the tip of the tongue up there. Let's just take a moment to check through our body. If anything in our body is uncomfortable or is tense, then we can move, we can adjust things. Everything is very easy and we try to make it conducive. And now, having prepared our body, we work with our mind, prepare our mind. So first we are feeling the four walls of this room, and we bring to mind that this is a very positive place to be, and this is a very special group that we are in now. And so we decide to keep our mind here in this spot, within these four walls. We will stop it from wandering away to other places and to other times and so forth. We just allow ourselves to be here, be completely present, and we decide if we find out at one point that the mind has run off, which is what it normally does, we're going to gently bring it back to this very place. Let's try to establish this attitude, to decide to do that, to bring the mind here, to keep it here. For the next 1.5 hours, there is no better place to be than here. So I allow myself to simply be here and participate in this evening. And then in order to concentrate the mind further, we bring our attention to our breath, how it is streaming in and streaming out at the nostrils. Or if this is more conducive for you, you can also focus at the navel, how the navel, the part of the stomach is going up and down, the belly is going up and down as you breathe in and out. And we just focus our mind on this very neutral, very unexciting object of the breath in order to pacify the mind and make it more neutral, calm. And so if we want, we can also count the breath, one time in and out as 1, and then again 2, up to 10. And then we start again from the beginning. But we don't have to do this, only if this is helping us to stay concentrated and focused. Because that's what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a focused mind. We place our attention on the breath. And when we find out during this meditation, which is a concentration meditation, that the mind has wandered off, then without making a big drama that we were a failure or that it didn't go well, we just gently, without any drama, bring the mind back and focus again on the breath. If we find out that the mind gets sleepy, we try to wake it up by, for example, imagining a very bright light, like looking into the sun or looking into a lantern or something. And then we can spend some minutes in this way by observing the breath. If any distraction appears in the mind or any thoughts appear, we don't have to follow them. We can just let go of them and gently bring the mind back to the breath. mind gets distracted, we just gently bring it back to the breath. If it gets sleepy, we wake it up by thinking about something bright. And then, having prepared our body and concentrated and calmed our mind, we can now do a little bit of analytical meditation in order to generate in this calm space in our mind a very positive attitude, a positive motivation for the evening. And we're going to meditate a little bit on the topic that we were talking about last time. So we bring to mind that we have a precious human rebirth, which is very rare. So I will say something about this topic in the meditation, but maybe I just can leave you for a minute or two with a thought. Bring to mind that you have a very specific, special state of life, that you have a precious human rebirth, and try to recall what you remember what that means. Try to recall what it means that you have a precious human rebirth, especially with regard to all the possible rebirths that there are in samsara. So specifically, we bring to mind how our mind stream has an incredible capacity to create lives, whole worlds of rebirth, just that it has an incredible capacity to generate all kind of dreams, all kind of perceptions, all kind of opinions. At the time of death, it is able to create all kind of amazing, most bizarre, most varied rebirths. So we could be anything within samsara. We don't have to be a human being. It is just that the mind this time has created us in the form of a human being. But when we die, we're going to lose this being a human being. And then the mind, in its endless creativity, will create another life, any other life. So let's meditate on this, how we all have in our mind this limitless creativity and capacity that not only creates dreams and opinions and perceptions, but even whole lives. How there will be rebirth, and that we are right now in a rebirth, one out of millions. So my mind in its endless creativity has now created myself in the form of a human being. So that means I'm free from certain rebirths which are unconducive for Dharma practice, and I have a human rebirth which is enabling me to do Dharma practice. So especially I'm right now free from my mind having created a rebirth of fear, of terror, of pain, of confusion, a rebirth in the animal realm, or we have also been talking about worse realms than the animal realm, like we would call the hell realm, or the preta realm, the hungry ghost realm, and so forth. So think about that, how right now you're kind of lucky that your mind has created you as a human being, and not as an animal, for example. So if you would be an animal, you would be constantly concerned about surviving, because in the animal realm, the beings are eating each other alive, like a lion and antelope, or like a bigger fish, a smaller fish, or like a bird and insect, like a cat, a bird, and so forth. And so you would live constantly in the fear of being eaten alive. And that would completely be overwhelming, and there would be no freedom to do any kind of Dharma activity for sure. You would be constantly simply trying to survive. So you're free of that. We want to appreciate that we are not in an animal realm, which would be possible. Out of the limitless creativity of our mind, we could become an animal. but we are not. We have a human rebirth. Let's think about this, how there is this benefit in being a human being, how you can do Dharma, how you can understand something about yourself, practice things, and change things in your life. Basically because you're not in the lower realms, you're not an animal or worse. And then not only do you have the freedom as a human being to not constantly be threatened in your very existence, in your very life. So however many problems you have in your life, there is some peace and there is some space for doing Dharma practice in comparison to the animal realms and below. But also if you look at pets that are at home and they are safe and they're not eaten alive and they're having very good conditions, even these pets, like cats and dogs at home, they simply lack the intelligence to ask themselves questions about their mind, about their birth, about their future, about their potential. They simply lack the capacity to practice Dharma. So also in that, you are very blessed to have a human rebirth, which is with intelligence. You can ask questions. A human being is almost like defined by being able to ask philosophical questions, questions that go beyond this life, questions about the meaning of life, about happiness and suffering and so forth. So again, your mind could have created you in the form of such a pet with an utter lack or limitation in intelligence. Let's appreciate that we have a human rebirth where we have this capacity to understand, to explore, and we are not animals or below for the time being. And further on, we bring to mind how our mind has the capacity to also bring about daydreams and imagine very beautiful things and very free and inspiring things and beauty and conducive situations and so forth. So in the same way, our mind is also, when we die out of this frame as a human being, able to create what is called a God realm, which is maybe possible to describe as a paradise and so forth. So while this is the case, what we are hearing here in this topic is that we are also blessed that we are not gods, that we have not been created by our mind in the form of a god. The God realm is not something eternal. It is something that lasts very long, is very pleasurable, and ends, and then it's just over. And there will be no essence that comes out of the God realm. It will be just an ongoing party, constant sensual experience or concentration experience. And because it is so overwhelmingly pleasant, the God will not have the capacity to actually practice Dharma, explore his own mind. He will be so distracted, he will be so absorbed in whatever is happening. A little bit like to people of today who have access to so many computer games or distractions and so forth, they never ever have the space to actually explore their own life. So we appreciate how we are a human being such that we have, as it says in the Dharma, the right measure of suffering and pleasure and happiness that gives us a safe environment and the intelligence to explore ourselves, and due to our suffering an incentive to actually explore our mind and explore suffering, and to actually take in essence, have a meaningful life and not just be distracted like a god. So we are a very powerful being, that we are a human being and neither an animal nor a god. So let's think about this, how our mind has the capacity to not only dream about extremely beautiful and attractive things, but even create lives as a god, and how we would be completely washed away by the experience without being able to practice any Dharma or ask philosophical questions or grow in any meaningful way. So we appreciate that we're human beings and not gods, because we have the right condition to actually go beyond our present understanding and explore things and grow. And then with a certain appreciation in our heart for being a human being in this very life, we decide to take the essence of this life and not to waste this human life. So we will use our special situation and our capacities in order to explore ourselves, explore our world, explore our mind, explore our suffering and our happiness, explore our potential as much as possible, and then actualize our potential as much as possible. And especially we want to do this right now, here, this evening. We want to take the essence of our precious human rebirth by engaging in this evening, listening, asking questions, thinking along, participating as much as possible. And then we can slowly come back and relax, open the eyes, relax the position, move a bit. So the module that we are still in, I think this is the last evening actually, at least with me. I don't know if you have a discussion group afterwards again, but this is the last evening of this module on meditation. So in the very beginning, we said there's different types of meditation. There's so-called placement meditation and there's analytical meditation. Yeah, so when we watch the breath, this is, for example, a placement meditation. It is aiming at increasing your capacity of concentration. And that's not a goal in itself. Actually, if you are just having the goal of gaining more concentration, one of the outcomes in a certain way is that you take a rebirth as a concentration god, right? That what we just talked about or meditated on that we don't want. So concentration is a tool. Yeah, by placement meditation, you develop concentration, which is a tool that you then use in analytical meditation. The actual thing, what we're actually looking for, is a very well-functioning analytical meditation. And so that's what we did here a little bit by generating this motivation in a meditative setup. So what I was trying to do is to introduce a certain kind of thought from the Dharma, and then give you space to develop this thought for yourself. So the idea in analytical meditation is that you take a certain description, a teaching of the Dharma, a certain thought, you develop this in yourself, you go over it, you know what you understand about it, you try to apply it to your own situation, yeah, really think about your own life, apply that. And as you go over this, you will see that the mind will react to this. There will be like an emotional response. Something will change. You will not stay a mere intellectual restating what you have read somewhere, but it will start to affect you. And this is what we're aiming for. Yeah. So in this way, then you actually, in this case, I did it as a motivation for this evening. Obviously, it took a lot of time, so it's the main part of the evening already anyway. So, but that's kind of what an analytical meditation is about, roughly. Yeah, what we just did. So, in an actual, like now I was leading one, but of course you can do this yourself. Yeah, the more you understand about the Dharma, then you can go and just set up a session. You prepare yourself, like we did here, with the position. You check the body, you concentrate your mind, you generate a motivation, and then, like now we did the whole analytic meditation as a motivation. But normally you would do a motivation, and then you start the actual topic. Then you would, let's say, have a session of 20 minutes or more, of course, depending on your capacity, where you would kind of go over a certain topic, whatever kind of Dharma mind you want to develop. Could be love, could be compassion, could be just the recognition of your precious human rebirth. And the aim would be that you generate a strong feeling, a strong, deep wish to not waste your life, to really take the essence, to really understand the quality of the life that you have attained, the potential of that, and then going for that. And not just thinking it's just any kind of life. You have a very specific state of life. So that's what this topic is about. So there's always a certain kind of attitude or insight, but actually a real felt insight that is aimed at by these topics described in the books, and then the meditation that you do about that. Yeah. So this kind of deeply felt insights, they will change your world, they will change your behavior, they will change how you see things, how you react to things, and so forth, what the decisions that you make, and so forth. And can, of course, be developed to very, very high levels with the great yogis meditating in caves for years and decades and so forth. So that's not where we are. We are in the very beginning. So that's what we do. Yeah, that's what the meditation, analytical meditation, is about. You try to not just have a knowledge about the Dharma, but then to actually integrate it by this tool. This tool includes calming the mind, having a concentrated mind. It especially also includes that you have knowledge about the Dharma. So first you need to know about the Dharma, and that what you have understood there, also by reflecting yourself, that then you can take in your own meditation and meditate on that. Yeah, so this is kind of, the meditation is not something that you just sit down and do it, at least not the analytical one, but it is something that you develop towards, which has many kind of branches leading up to this capacity. And of course, you can hear a little bit of Dharma teachings and then start to meditate on that. But as you continue to study the Dharma, then also your meditation will become more and more rich, obviously. So that's just as a general thing. Apart from that, I wanted to continue with this topic of the precious human rebirth, because it has actually a lot of topics in them. I will not be able to cover this here for sure. I was just starting last time the description of the 8 so-called leisures, or freedoms that are characterizing precious human rebirth. And I was only covering 4, which was that we have the freedom from the hell realm, the preta realm, the animal realm, and the god realm, roughly. So just that. There's actually 4 more, and I want to talk today about these other 4. But actually, there's also another presentation from another text from another master that is talking about the 10 endowments. So while this here is kind of being free from a rebirth in the lower realm, or free from a rebirth in the upper realm, the endowments are talking about what we have. So we are endowed with the human rebirth. And so there is 10 endowments that is described there. So I will not have the time to go through this. They're similar, but they are not the same. So there's a different way also to meditate and to develop this feeling of the preciousness of our present state of rebirth. And then there's analogies and stories and many things that are used in order to support us in developing this kind of understanding of where we are in the universe, really. That we just took a rebirth, that this rebirth is like a bubble, it's going to burst in death, and it's going to be just completely over us being human beings, and then comes whatever comes next. And so we should not take anything for granted. We should not take for granted that we are a human being. We should not take for granted that we're living in peace. We should not take for granted that there's maybe certain affluence or financial support. We should not take for granted that Dharma is available, and if it is only available through the internet or through Skype, But for example, you people have a group there. There's many cities who don't have a group. There's no interest in Dharma whatsoever. So we will see about this when I talk about the remaining four things. So it actually is a topic that has a lot to do with becoming aware where we are or what our life looks like, and not to take any of this for granted. Again, I say that, not to take anything for granted, but to almost like to rejoice in what we have attained here in this life. And to be also aware that we're going to lose this completely. If we don't bring together the causes to attain this again in a future life, then this precious human rebirth will be just over. So again, the point is to see that what we have here is precious human rebirth, and this precious human rebirth is precious because, not because actually, because up to now I was just talking about having a human rebirth. It is not that to be a human is precious per se. But although, of course, it is very rare in samsara to be a human being, as we can see that most beings are visibly, for what we can clearly see, are in the animal realm. There's much more animals, much more insects, much more fish than there's human beings. Yeah, so that's already very clear. So it's very rare to be a human being. But the preciousness in the word or in the term precious human rebirth comes from having the capacity to practice Dharma. And to have the capacity to practice Dharma, it is not enough to just be a human being. Yeah, so I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit. So the point is to understand the preciousness of our specific human rebirth by going through these 8 aspects which make a human rebirth precious, and then understand that it is precious because it has a capacity to practice Dharma, to change the mind, to actually manipulate or to work on, to control future rebirths. It has even the capacity to completely break the whole mechanism of rebirth and to get liberated out of samsara into liberation, into nirvana. And it has even the capacity to become completely enlightened, to get anything, any kind of obscuration out of our mind, out of our mind stream, and to actualize the highest potential, which is our Buddha nature. To actualize it so we gain the actual state of a Buddha. But this is 3 different spiritual goals, if you can say. So one of them is to the Dharma or spirituality will empower you to actually bring about more higher rebirth, or keep you safe from becoming an animal and below. It can even kind of empower you to get, again, not just a human rebirth, but a precious human rebirth. But that's the first level. Then, so that our precious human rebirth has the power to do that if we use it well. It has also the power for the second level, which is to become completely liberated out of any kind of rebirth into nirvana. And it has even the power for the third level to become completely enlightened. So then, out of these eight freedoms, which there were 4 of being free of going to a non-human rebirth. And then there is 4 with regard to having a human rebirth. There's 4 that are qualifying that human rebirth. So what I'm saying is that you can have a human rebirth and it's not a precious human rebirth in the sense of the Dharma. So this does not mean that the Dharma is saying there is kind of worthy humans and unworthy humans. Yeah? That's not the point. It's not saying like that there's superior human beings and inferior human beings. So it's not about that. It's simply about that. Is it a human life that is empowered such that it can practice spirituality? So let's just look at these four aspects with regard to being a human. So what this wants to say is that you can be a human and you can have certain adverse conditions, something that stops you from practicing Dharma, although you're a human being. So we heard while a hell being, why a preta being, while an animal, and why a god cannot practice Dharma. So these 4 are going to be about why many human beings, while being a human being, cannot practice the Dharma. So if you have any of these, then while you're a human being, you don't have a precious human being, because due to having these obstacles, you are not capable to actually take an essence out of this human life and actually work with your mind and develop to higher states. So I just want to present these. So where to start? There's 4 of them, which to start with maybe. So let's talk about one is called "You are free of being born into a barbarian country." Full on. So you're not born into a barbarian country. So what is a barbarian country? A barbarian country is a country in which the Dharma is not available. Yeah, so a human being, you're intelligent, you have maybe peace and what have you, but the Dharma is not available. Yeah, so for example, I would say like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, while Buddhism was spread in Tibet, was spread in China, in Japan, in Burma, Laos, what have you, all these Buddhist countries, there was simply no Buddhism whatsoever in Europe. There was no Buddhism in Romania. I don't know how many decades we have to go back to be able to say there's no Buddhism in Romania. Maybe 30 years, I don't know, maybe 20 years. So that's a barbarian country. A barbarian country is a country in which the Dharma, while it exists on the planet, it is not available in that country. Yeah, so it's actually true for all Europe that it was a barbarian country before. Because in the end, from the point of the Dharma, the only thing that counts and the only thing that is really, really precious is Dharma and Dharma practice. And if this is not available in that country, these people, these nations, they can be advanced in technology as much as they want. It doesn't matter. They can have so much knowledge about history and about ancient cultures and what have you. It doesn't matter. They don't have the Dharma. They don't have an instruction how to work with the mind, how to meditate, how to change your behavior, what is ethical, what is unethical, and so forth. Yeah. So that's a barbarian country. A barbarian country is not that the people are sitting around a fire and eating raw meat from a bone or something like that. It's not that. It is a country, however much developed, that doesn't have Dharma, that doesn't have the tools to develop your mind, that doesn't have the tools to understand rebirth and deal with it, to understand karma and deal with that, to understand your Buddha potential and manifest it and so forth. So we probably can say, yeah, with all the resources that we have available today, that we are not living in a barbarian country, in a barbarian country. So the Dharma, we have some access to Dharma. Of course, you might have different layers of having access to Dharma. Yeah, for example, here in Europe, we don't have the same access to studies as the Tibetans have in exile, in the 3 exile monasteries in India, where the complete Dharma can be studied, the complete Dharma is taught, and so forth. So for us, not all texts have been translated into our languages. We do not maybe have so huge monasteries or university institutions and so forth, or Dharma centers and so forth. But we can do a lot already, with that what we have. So we have this aspect. We have this freedom from being free of being born in a barbarian country. But again, we should not take this for granted, because just 1 generation before, it was a barbarian country in that very city that we are living, in this very place where we are meeting, in this very continent. There was no light of the Dharma. It was not possible to enter the path or to proceed on the path to enlightenment or to liberation, because there were no teachings on that. And there was nobody who's instructing you on that. And there was no group to practice with. It was a barbarian country. Again, just to make this clear, it is not about being kind of backward in civilization or something like that. It is about having the Dharma or not. So there could be an area which has much less civilization in the sense of technology or internet or streets or cars or whatever, and it is not a barbarian country because it has the Dharma. And another country might be very well developed, first world country and what have you, and have social security and what have you, and at the same time be a barbarian country. There's a question?
Yes. I'm sorry. But
you have to come closer to the mic. I don't hear you.
Sorry. So Buddha
at first was born in such a country, right? Because there was no concept of Dharma in that country at that moment. He invented it, right?
Yeah.
So isn't it possible for somebody born in a barbarian country to still have the same, to go through similar experiences and reach the same kind of, I don't know, the same trajectory and go towards enlightenment and follow the right path, just like
Okay, I think I get it. I think I get it. You say that it was a barbarian country. The Dharma was not present there. The Buddha goes there and becomes enlightened in the barbarian country, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to keep this short because we don't have so much time, and I have to see more things that I definitely want to talk with you about with you. So to keep it short, according to the Mahayana, the Buddha did not come to India as somebody who had to practice anything. The Buddha came as a Buddha to India. This is different from how the Hinayana, the Theravada countries are explaining it. For the Theravadas, there was a bodhisattva coming to India and he was practicing certain things, and then he became enlightened in Bodh Gaya, and then he was a Buddha and did certain Buddha deeds. According to the Mahayana, the Buddha was long enlightened before, and he came to the place as a Buddha. That means as somebody who doesn't have to practice anything. He's simply coming to teach. So therefore, for the Buddha, we don't have to talk about if he had a precious human rebirth or something like this, because a precious human rebirth is precious such that you can practice in that life. The Buddha has nothing left to practice. He came complete into the situation to reveal Dharma. So what was unique in this situation is that the Indian civilization without the Dharma had developed so far that it was a good vessel for the Buddha to teach what he had to teach. Yeah, they were already believing in karma. They were already believing in reincarnation. They were already doing all kind of ascetic practices. They were already kind of monks, if you like, or ascetics in the forest. There were already people living the lay life. They were already doing concentration, meditation, and so forth. And they were also having all kind of views about the mind and about ignorance that keeps you in samsara. What is the actual path? So from the Buddhist point of view, what the Buddha had to say was, what they came up with was not the actual path. So they didn't understand, but in all their effort, in all their partial understanding, they did not have the complete path. And if you don't have the complete path, you cannot reach the complete result. So he came into a situation, I don't want to say that was almost there, but it was very developed. And in this situation, the people were prepared to hear what the Buddha had to say. So he came to that not in order for himself to practice anything and become enlightened. He was already enlightened. So he came there and in this very conducive situation, he gave the final. It's not really the final bit that was missing. There was quite a bit, quite something missing. But the situation was such that he could give this teaching. Like if he would have appeared at the same time somewhere in Egypt, nobody would have been able to understand anything what he's talking about. Yeah, so he could come to India and nowhere else. So they were on a certain level. But it's not, anyway, to give it short, it's not that the Buddha did not have a precious human rebirth because he was born in a barbaric country, because this precious human rebirth is a topic for those who need to practice. The Buddha had nothing to practice anymore. Right?
Okay, thank you. I understand this part. Still, there must have been a first mind ever to reach the state of Buddha for it to exist in the first place. But okay,
Was it a question, or was it a question that was then taken back, or whatever? Anyway, there was no first Buddha. There was no first Buddha. It's very shocking, but there is no first Buddha. That's very shocking. It's in the same way that we didn't have a first life. Yeah, if you go into time with Buddhism, Buddhism is always shocking you because it's constantly dealing with eternity and with everything being limitless and so forth. Anyway, bringing it back to our level, yeah, not to what the Buddha. What about the Buddha? We're talking about our level, yeah, that we are just here in Cluj sitting together with some tea in front of us, yeah, to understand why we have a precious human rebirth, yeah. So we are not in a barbaric country. So that's the first point here. All right? Can we leave it at that? So, because we have exactly 15 minutes left. Anyway, so I just want to mention the other ones. So you could be you could simply be cut off from the Dharma. Yeah? So you live in a barbaric country, however developed your country is, you don't have Dharma available, you cannot practice the Dharma. It might exist somewhere else. Then there is another thing that Buddhism is talking about, so-called dark eons. Yeah, so dark stretches of time where the Dharma is not available whatsoever. There is no Dharma on the whole planet. It's not that there's barbaric countries and other countries which have the Dharma. The Dharma is simply not there. Nobody gets the instructions for the complete path. Nobody can get enlightened. Nobody can get even liberated. Maybe they even have problems to get a good rebirth. Yeah? So we are not born in that time. Yeah? The Buddha has a very, very specific, let's say, religion. I don't think there's any other religion where the founder from the beginning was saying, this religion will go out of existence at one point. It will degenerate more and more, it will fade away more and more, and then it will go out of existence. And there will be no Dharma on the planet. There will be no instruction, no group to practice, there will be no possibility to get liberated or to get enlightened, because the Dharma will have withered away and will have become non-existent. So when that has happened, then there's a dark age from the point of view that there is no possibility to get liberated or to get enlightened. So this dark age might be an age of peace, of affluence, of human rights, citizen rights, women's rights, and whatever, yeah? But there is no Dharma, so it is a dark age from that point of view. So wherever you are born in this planet, you will not have access to the Dharma. You will not be able to work with your mind, you will not be able to advance. So this is, although you're a human being, you're not an animal, you're not a god, you're not anywhere else, you're a human being, but you simply have no access to the Dharma, because it doesn't exist on the whole planet. So actually, in the description of the cosmic time cycles, Buddhism is saying that the dark times, or the eons of darkness, are by far more than the moments where there is Dharma available. So for us, it appears pretty impressive that the Buddha Dharma is already around since 2,500 years. Some say even more. But actually, it is nothing in comparison to how the cosmos is developing and so forth. So this mere 2,500 years in comparison to, for example, how long humans already exist. Human beings exist. So even if you just think about that, how long human beings existed, for the most of the time, there was no Dharma. It was a dark age. And if the Dharma dissolves, and there is science for that, there's, for example, quotes in scriptures from other texts, and we can't find these texts anymore. There's just this quote left. So it seems like there's a text, there's some part of the Dharma is lost. Also in Tantra, it seems like there is tantric texts and tantric practices which are lost, which we find in the text mentioned, but there is no text about this anymore. In India itself, Buddhism got extinct. In Tibet, it's getting extinct as we're speaking, and so forth. So the Dharma is indeed in a state of being kind of vulnerable, or kind of being impermanent and changing and so forth. Actually, there's even scriptures where the Buddha said the Dharma will only abide for 1,000 years. So then it is pointed out how very specific masters appeared and gave the Dharma a very strong push. One of them is said to be Lama Tsongkhapa in Tibet, that he again kind of rectified the Dharma, gave it a very strong impulse for practice and so forth. So again, it lasted longer. So, but anyway, it's always on the verge, or it's always in danger. Like, for example, if there would be a single generation that doesn't study the texts, and a single generation that doesn't practice the texts, then the next generation would have no access anymore. And the chain would be broken, and the transmission is over, and the Dharma is just over and out. So this can happen very, very, very easily. We are lucky we are not living in a dark age. We are living at a time where the Buddha has come, has taught, and the teaching is still around. And there's still people who practice this and people who have interest in this and so forth. Yeah, so we already have two freedoms. We are free from living in a dark age, where the Dharma is not available whatsoever. And we're also free from, while the Dharma is there, we don't have access because we are living in a so-called barbarian country. Yeah? So again, both of this is not to be taken for granted. We could easily be human beings living in a dark age. We could easily be human beings living in a barbaric country, like, for example, our parents and grandparents, and so forth. Then there is another thing which is very touchy. Again, what I'm talking about here is the precious human rebirth. Precious is not talking about being superior as opposed to inferior. It is simply saying it's a rebirth where you have the capacity to practice Dharma, and in the end, this is what's going to count in your life. This is going to be the essence, and not how many languages you speak or how much you know about history and so forth. It's the question how much you understand about yourself, your mind, how you practice with it, how you change it, and so forth. So there is unfortunately beings who, human beings, who have been born with, how you say, deficiencies, or you would call this, I don't know, like let's say, mentally limited, or like blind or mute, and so forth. Yeah. So there is clearly human beings who kind of suffer limitations or handicaps or something like this, which as a result, how you say, does not allow them, or does not give them the opportunity to practice Dharma as a fact. Yeah, it is simply that, let's say, they cannot get instructions, they don't understand instructions, they cannot concentrate and so forth. Yeah? So they have all kind of obstacles. This is called obstacles in their faculties. So faculties is normally referring to the faculty of eyesight, of being able to speak, able to memorize, or to think and so forth. Yeah. So again, such a rebirth where people are, let's say, handicapped in this way, so have deficient faculties, there's nothing about us that would exclude such a rebirth. When we die out of this life, where we have all our faculties and where we have all these capacities, these normal capacities, when we die out of this, there is no guarantee whatsoever for the time being, if we just continue like this, there's no guarantee that we could not take on a rebirth where we are handicapped, where we are having limitations. And the fact, so this is something, again, to meditate on. How would it be if I would be handicapped? You could even say, what would happen if I would have an accident, and when I wake up on the emergency station, I can no longer think clearly, or I can no longer move normally, or something. Would I still be able to practice Dharma, or to learn more, or to do something? Or what if I would have been born like that? So the point is simply to appreciate that we could have all these limitations, and that would exclude us from being able to practice Dharma, not because of the Dharma, not because the Dharma wants to exclude you or something like this, but simply because of what this does to you as a human being. And we are free from that. We don't have that situation. We could easily have this situation, and it might happen to us in the future. Actually, if you think about beginningless times, we probably had this kind of rebirth many, many times. We were many, many times born as human beings which were handicapped. So we don't have this time around. We might have this in the future. We most likely had it in the past, but this time we don't have it. So we don't have this obstacle for the Dharma practice. Again, something to rejoice in, and to appreciate that, and to feel like an urgency to therefore use this situation. So this is for the case that you are actually living in a place where there is Dharma. You're not living in a dark age where there's no Dharma anywhere. You're not living in a barbarian country. You're living in a place where the Dharma is there, but you are handicapped. You have deficiencies in your faculties, so you cannot participate in that what is available for everybody else. So the fourth one is similar to that, but it's different, but very similar. Again, you are living in a place where the Dharma is available, but how this is phrased here is you are holding wrong views. And what that means is that you have strong opinions, or like maybe in a nutshell, you could say you're not open to listen. You have very strong formulated opinions that, for example, it is 100% clear there's no rebirth. It is 100% clear, you're not going to talk about this, that there is no influence of karma on your decision, on your character, on your birth, and so forth. Yeah? There's no such thing like karma. You completely decided on this. Yeah? This is different from thinking like, oh, that's a strange idea, rebirth, or that's a strange idea, karma, and so forth. Well, how would you establish this? How do you get this kind of idea? So you listen to some extent, you have some kind of interest. So a wrong view would be from the beginning very strongly being against it, being completely set on refuting that, being completely set on rejecting this. In other words, having no real interest in that what is available. You don't want the Dharma. So the Dharma is there, but because of your mental setup, which is again something that your mind created, is not that everybody is in this setup, but some people are in this mental space. Yeah? And we were many times in this mental space in past lives. So this life, we seem to have a certain interest in the Dharma. We're interested in all these topics on spirituality, what's our potential, and so forth. We have a certain interest in hearing the Dharma teachings and so forth. That's why we're here. We have maybe have a certain interest in the Dharma practices. That's why we're here. So maybe we can say that maybe most people in your city do not have this kind of interest. Even if they might find out that there is a Dharma teaching here or there, or a Dharma book and so forth, they would never pick it up. So that's already kind of an obstacle for actual Dharma practice. So that means that these people, they have a human rebirth. They're not born as an animal. They're not constantly afraid to be eaten alive. They have intelligence. They're not of the animal type where they cannot reflect on philosophy and psychology and so forth. They're not completely lost in appearances like the gods. They're not in utter pain like the beings in the hell. They are not living at a time where the Dharma is not available. Dharma is very much available, but they have no interest. So it's right there. And so maybe this is a good point to think about. So these very people around you, the question is, do they have a precious human rebirth? They're living in peace, they're human beings, they're maybe very educated, maybe they're affluent or whatever. But what's the essence of their life? Do they have any capacity to take the essence of their life? Do they have any capacity to actually transform themselves, to understand themselves, to understand about their cosmic aspect of having no beginning and no end, to understand what mind is? Do they have any interest? Anyway, this is all going into this this area of this fourth point. So actually the fourth point is saying having strong wrong views. So that is a very strong state of mind where somebody is completely against what the Dharma has to offer. He doesn't want to listen. He doesn't want to explore that. Yeah. So all of these things we are free of. We are free of being in a barbarian country. We are free of being in a dark age. We are free of having severe mental or physical limitations. We are free of having no interest or no openness to Dharma whatsoever. And because of that, we can actually enter into the Dharma. We can actually find out about the Dharma, use the Dharma, analyze the Dharma, use the practices, try them out and so forth, analyze. So again, this is not saying that therefore we should just take whatever the Dharma is saying. The Buddha was always very clear that nobody should accept what he's saying just out of respect or out of veneration or something like this. He was always saying everybody has to check my teachings. All what I'm saying needs to be checked, and if you feel like it's not correct, then put it aside, at least for the time being. Yeah. So to have a precious human rebirth simply means that you can interact with the Dharma. Yeah, you can check it out. You have no obstacles for that. You're free. You have the 8 freedoms, and that's kind of this approach from the Master Nagarjuna, who is saying the precious human rebirth has this characteristic of 8 freedoms. As I said, there's another master, Master Sangha, who's talking about the 10 endowments, but we will not have time to go into that. So the meditation on this topic would have different stages. One type of meditation is to meditate again and again on how we have a precious human rebirth, because we have these 8 freedoms and generate this strong appreciation and get a feeling for the rarity of it. Then another type of meditation would be about meditating on how this precious human rebirth has this strong potential that you actually can influence your future lives by using it well, by taking the essence. How it has the capacity to actually gain liberation, how it has the capacity to become completely developed according to your deepest potential of Buddha nature, that you can actually become a Buddha. So you think not only how special your state is right now, but how powerful it is, what you can do with that. And then you would also meditate on how it is very rare, very difficult to get this kind of state. So there's a lot to be said there. There's a lot of more information. Actually, this topic of precious human rebirth is very comprehensive. Yeah, very, 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 almost covering the whole of Dharma. To some extent, you could only meditate on precious human rebirth, and you would probably get enlightened because it touches on everything of the Dharma. So all I can offer to you in these short sessions here is this presentation of these 8 aspects, and I think this is already giving you something that you can use in your own life, that you can meditate on in an analytical way. It is, from my point of view, also something that is very useful to bring in your daily life, because the main topic here is to not waste your life, to not waste this precious opportunity that you have, but to actually take the essence of your life. So it is empowering. It gives you the question, what am I doing with my life? I have this very special life that many other people don't have. I have a precious human rebirth that even most human beings don't have. And what am I doing with my life? Am I just doing what everybody else is doing who doesn't have a precious human rebirth? So then I have a precious human rebirth, but it's not gonna bring anything. Sometimes they say it is like going to the jewel island and coming back empty-handed without having brought any jewels. So this is a very strong topic here. A very strong point here is that it is possible to waste your life. It does matter how you live your life, and it matters in every day and every hour. So that's a very empowering thought. It's something really to think about. Yeah, to check your life. How is your life going? Are you taking the essence? Are you living up to the potential and to the power that your precious human rebirth is holding? And if you reflect along these lines, it might also empower you to make changes in your life and to live your life differently. It is also, when you think about all these things, like it is including rebirth, and that there's no beginning to your mind stream and so forth, that you could be any kind of other being, that you don't necessarily have to be a human being and so forth. Yeah. So all of this is also giving you a very different perspective on life. Yeah? That how your life is just one life out of many possible rebirth, that you could be many other things, that you can really change and so forth. So very, very rich topic. A very rich topic for analytical meditation. So I want to invite you to take all of this and put it into practice, and to actually meditate on this a little bit like we did this morning. Morning, I say, at the beginning of the session, and to motivate your life along these lines of precious human rebirth. Yeah, maybe I can leave it there then. It's already 7 o'clock here, anyway, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock probably where you are. Do you have any questions on that? Wow, either it was very clear or it was super confusing. Nobody has any questions. If nobody has questions, then we can stop here for with a dedication. Yeah. Say goodbye to the. Is he staying or is he leaving? He's leaving. Bye bye. But anyway, so we can. Just a word on that. So our mind has this capacity to engage into virtuous activity. It has the capacity to generate positive states of mind. And within that, it is generating what you could call a positive energy. Actually, what we call it is positive karma. So this kind of, this is a natural process. Yeah, naturally the mind is producing this kind of phenomena. And this kind of phenomena again can be played with. Yeah, if you are not doing a dedication of positive acts that you did, of virtue, of positive karma, then it will just ripen into something positive, something trivial, some good condition, some good conversation, some positive thing. But if you do actually a dedication where you kind of want to dedicate this positive potential to a certain result, then you can guide this energy, the force of this energy into that direction. So we could dedicate the merits or the positive potential that we created this evening, yeah, by doing our utmost to follow this Dharma thoughts, to meditate together and so forth. We can dedicate this positive potential so that what we have understood tonight can grow deeper and deeper, and that we will be successful to integrate this in our life. And what we have not understood, that we can clarify that and gain an understanding about this. And that in this way we are able to influence our life such that we have less problems, have a vaster view, more peace in our life, more wisdom, but also that we have more love and compassion, understand more the situation of others, and that we might even be able to help them out of the growing understanding and the growing wisdom that we gain by our spiritual effort. So let's dedicate in this way this positive potential for our own development and for the benefit of all other people around us. Thank you very much. So that's it then for today. And as I said, I think this was the last session. I don't know if you have do you have a discussion group after this, or are we doing the next module next week?
We had the last discussion group of this module last week.
Okay.
So we are closing the module tonight, and for the next module, Marius said he will send an email to discuss the next steps.
Okay.
I'm just not, we will be extremely grateful if you want to continue, and I'm not sure if we scheduled it next Tuesday or not. So
Okay.
I will let Marius know to write you on this. And
Right.
for all your input so far, we want to show you our gratefulness and thank you so much for all your efforts you put in teaching us, and we really enjoyed listening to you on Skype and looking forward to the next module. So thank you as well.
Thank you very much for your kind words. All right. Yeah. So yeah. So then I see with Marius how we continue from there.
Yes.
Right. So then all the best to all of you. Take care of yourself. Try to use some of the stuff that I told you, because I tell it to you from what my teachers told me, and I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm also trying to use it in my life. Okay. Take care. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.